Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the next edition of the webinar series, where today we have a very interesting speaker who's going to talk about sales, marketing alignment on the journey towards having the right customers and delivering a great customer experience. But my name is Deva Rangarajan. I am the director of the Sales Center at Ball State University. And today we have a talented professional, Katie Meloche from Marketo, an Adobe company. And she is a sales consultant. Am I right, Katie?
Solution consultant.
Solution consultant. My apologies, but at the end of the day, when we say sales today, we say everything has to be about solutions. So she's a solutions consultant at Marketo, and she's going to be sharing with us some of her insights and her experiences, how organizations go about trying to get the right customers, bring the right messages across to them, and make sure that the customer journey, the customer progresses in it with the right kind of information to make the relevant choices as well. So Katie, thank you so much.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Katie, so as you see that I messed up your title as sales consultant because I'm a salesperson. I always talk about sales consultants, but you pretty much corrected me and said solution consultant. Now tell me, what does a solution consultant do?
Sure. So I sit in the sales organization, right? I'm a part of the pre-sales, function within Adobe. And really what a solutions consultant is somebody that will come into a conversation after we've had an initial type of discovery call and demonstrate, a particular product set that we have, show sort of the ins and outs relative to the use case that the customer is trying to solve for. So we identify areas where they might have some pain points where they're looking to improve or to scale, and we solution really what that good fit is going to be based on what we have to offer. So there are different terms that it's called. I've heard sales engineer, solutions engineer, solutions consultant. I worked at IBM for a few years, and there I was a technical sales specialist. So more of a specialized role in the technicality behind a product set and fitting some of those gaps versus, a traditional type of salesperson. So I support the sales team across the board from a product perspective.
Fantastic. Katie, now you mentioned the fact that you talked about IBM before. You said different terminologies and everything else. You also mentioned the fact that you sort of might come in, or people with your title usually come in after the initial kind of meetings with the customers, or at least calls with the customers have taken place. So these days we have roles like the SDRs and the BDRs, like the inside sales reps. My question to you is that where do you stand as what they call account executives right now? Or are you in one of those where even account executives, that is those people who do the demo, they might need some help as well?
Yeah. So typically a lead will come in via an SDR or, in an account where we maybe already have an established relationship. And the account executives are sort of like the front line of, any opportunity. They'll have those initial conversations, understand who are kind of the players in the space that we need to be working alongside. And then they'll pull me in when it makes sense to actually show the product and get kind of to the solutioning piece of the equation, right? So they're there to listen, to hear, to understand where the customer really wants to go. And then I come in to just kind of bring it to life as far as what they're looking to do and see if that's a good fit for them.
Fantastic. And when you do this, when you're talking about being a solution, does it involve face-to-face meetings with the customers, or does it also involve remote meetings through things like Zoom or Skype, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I'm sitting in my apartment at home. I live in Michigan. I am a remote employee, and I have been both at Marketo, Adobe, and at IBM as well. So basically I'm at home demoing remote. I might join discovery calls and do that sort of thing. And then when it makes sense for me to get on site, generally, in a little bit more like bigger deals, complex deals, then I'll get on a plane. And, as it stands today, I cover really any account across the United States. Our team does still operate at a global presence, so potentially some international travel opportunity, just depending on the deal and the right fit. So, how we assign opportunities today is really who's the right solutions consultant for the deal based on, past experience with other deals. Maybe we're, in there against a competitor and somebody used to work for one, as an example. So just really, align who's kind of best fit. So travel is definitely in play, which I enjoy. It's flexible.
Fantastic. But the idea of flexing, flex desks and even working from home is also something that you say that you see happening. I guess in the technology space, that is still doable as well.
Yeah.
Now, building on that, well, if you take a look at this, so what are the typical KPIs, key performance indicators that are used for a solution consultant? I can imagine for AEs could be the number of closed deals or how are things progressing to the pipeline and everything else. Whereas in your case, you are extremely critical for that value messaging that you want to bring across to your customers. But at the same time, you're not, are you held responsible for the final revenue generation as well?
So yeah, so we are commissioned here at Marketo. So we do have a quota that we carry as a team that we want to show our contribution that we've helped to get these deals across the line, right? We're a really vital piece of kind of the sales puzzle here. And then as well, I do carry, a mix of that is also what I, solely contribute to as well. So I like that structure because our team all works together, helps each other out. We want to win as a team, meaning the solutions consultant team, but also the broader sales team as well. And then it's nice to sort of have a little bit of ownership and skin in the game as well, right? So that I keep refining my demo skills, my presentation skills, my product knowledge, right? I continue to develop that as well. So while I don't have a quota every single quarter that says you need to close this much or identify this many opportunities, it kind of all, mixes together and we kind of sit adjunct to that.
Fantastic. Now, essentially, if I take a look at it, so yes, you eventually are responsible for helping in generating revenue as well. So in this way, to what extent do you find some kind of a kinship or a kindred spirits in the role of the customer success? Because one of the things you have is that both of you, from what I'm hearing, is that do not have direct revenue responsibilities, but both of you are so critical for the, not just, so in your case, you're very critical for the initial revenue generation, and the customer success is going to be responsible for continued revenue generation. But yet both of you might not have direct sales targets, right? So what kind of a relationship do you have with customer success? And you see a lot of similarities in how you are groomed, evaluated within your organization?
Yeah, we absolutely have a customer success organization that is focused on those renewals, right? So selling, SaaS-based solutions, typically contracts run about, they could be yearly, they could be 3 years, whatever that looks like. What the customer success organization wants to make sure is that they've adopted those solutions, are actually utilizing them on a day-to-day basis and realizing the value from them so that they want to stick with us. Where I sort of plug into that sort of after the transaction happens, right? And we think about continued partnership, where I'll plug in is if we look at like an instance review to see, where's the adoption at? Do we have a lot of the different campaigns and programs running on the marketing automation side? Are they really utilizing the tool? And if not, are there areas where they need some additional learning? So I'll show sort of a demo like, hey, you own this, by the way. Here's some things that really could make sense based on your specific business and your use case. And then from there, they kind of get that like top-down view of what they're able to do. We might pull in some partner or some services to sort of help them get that off the ground, but we will absolutely show them, what the art of the possible is with what they have. And so just that continued relationship is very key for us.
Fascinating, because one of the things that we're doing is that we're actually going to interview a couple of other customer success folks from other companies as well. But I'd always thought about the role of the customer success as from the viewpoint of talking mostly either to what you would call like a field sales executive or an account executive. But it had never struck me that actually that when you need to take a look at usage of the product, is the customer using our solution the right way, that they might actually need to work with the solution consultant, because you are the kind of the experts. See, sure, the account executive is going to come and say, okay, this is what we can deliver in value, but the usage of it is the customer being trained the right way. The customer success might actually have to work with you guys a lot more than sometimes even the account executive is just handing over it, right? So, hey, it's time to renew the contract. This is the kind of information that we've had. These are the results of the QBR, the quarterly business review meetings that we've had. So, hey, it's your job to come and close the deal or sign up for the next time period, right? But whereas,
Yeah, and one thing that they'll do too, that they'll own is sort of a maturity curve,
Yeah.
right? Where the customer starts, like we're in a crawl phase right here. And for us to get to walk and then to run, what other components do we need to be utilizing and get off the ground, right? There might be some things where we plug in different add-ons, in which case there's another deal cycle that we're sort of running with, as we track towards a renewal. But as well, where's that alignment, right? What are those pieces? What's green, what's yellow, what's red? Where are we at right now? Where do we sit? Then how do we kind of expand as they continue to grow? So that's really the customer success side. But I have seen cases where a solutions consultant will sort of analyze where they're sitting and kind of the go ahead strategy, right? Because we're all one team at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So,
Indeed.
yeah.
And for me, this is fascinating. So I'd never thought of it from that perspective. One more question about your specific role, and then we can move on to what are some of the things that you observe when you deal with a lot of companies as well. Is one of the things I'm assuming is that when you actually see a lot of these products and solutions that you have that you want to run by your customers, right? I'm assuming that you are also looking at improvements to your own products, right? And your own solutions, because yes, the products have been created. Again, I do not exactly know the process or any kind of design oriented thinking that Adobe or Marketo may be looking at in generating your products. But still, there's a lot of assumptions that would go into creating your solutions that have to be tested with customers. And, or at least you think everything is perfect. You start talking to customers and start realizing, wait a minute, I think there needs to be something. So to what extent do you also go back to your product teams, to your delivery teams and say, wait a minute, hey, listen, we're selling this, but these are some things we're observing that you should be careful about and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's sort of, there's a few different avenues that kind of culminate it all together. So, from where I sit, I'll kind of hit on some things that I think are really key. I wouldn't say that they are only unique to Marketo, but I think they are ones that we do very well. And in other, companies that I've seen or have worked for, this just blows it out of the water. So the first being regional user groups. So based on if you're in the Chicago area, if you're in Denver, if you're in Toronto, like wherever these hubs are regionally, right? We pull customers together every quarter and we bring in specialists, right? Whether it's from the product team to talk about what's the roadmap, where we're going, we've heard you, we're implementing these changes, here's what you can expect. Whether it's partners to discuss, right, what they bring to the table, where they might be able to plug in. It's 1 or 2 day sessions of all of these things like tips and tricks Marketo, right? But the dynamic of the Marketo user group specifically that I've picked up on is it's not just let's go talk about the great stuff, let's go talk about our pain, right? But the customers are actually like thought leaders in the marketing automation space. And there's a lot of camaraderie, whether it's, just spending time together, like in a social setting or in some of these sessions where I think there's just a huge knowledge base there of that coming together. Product management takes those very seriously and the feedback we get from those. As you launch new products, I think across the board, there will be early adopters that are customers to do some sort of like beta testing, give that feedback. There's a huge Marketo Marketing Nation out there where customers can submit questions. We've got experts on our side, experts that are Marketo power users out in the world that will, interact and respond in sort of a blog type of fashion with Q&A. And honestly, some days if I have questions, I go out there and find my answers there. So it's a super powerful kind of cohort that we've seen within Marketo. And I think that product gets a lot of that feedback from, the customers, what are improvements, right? Because these are people that are boots on the ground in the trenches with the product day in and day out. And as you're, in a SaaS-based model, it's, very iterative. So every quarter, if we have a new release or how often that is, these new improvements, right? We want to understand what's coming out. So a really exciting one with Marketo is a completely new user interface is being updated and launched. And that's just a really exciting time because, we've kind of taken what looks like sort of a historical artifact and turn it into something that's super appealing. And it's just, it's something as simple as the look and feel, right? But of course, the functionality will continue to just get better too.
It's fascinating. So when you talk about this, so you have the whole might of, I love the term Marketo. What is nation? You say marketing, Marketo Market Nation, right? So so it's almost like a tongue twister. So Marketo Marketing Nation. Now that is the whole organization. But from your point, from a viewpoint of a solution consultant, right?
Hmm.
is this something where you are kind of being held responsible for taking care of the region that you're in to bring your customers to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you view a solution consultant's role in this?
Sure. So as far as regional user groups and kind
Yeah,
of the activities that are happening, generally the sales reps or the customer success managers will make sure that their specific client lists or territories are squared away and
yeah,
attending. Now, as a solutions consultant, I might present at user groups,
yeah.
right? To run through a specific demo,
Got it.
to do a breakout session, to zoom into something a little bit further than you might at a high level. Just to be there to answer questions. I mean, honestly, I would go there and probably learn a lot
Yeah,
myself.
sure.
Um, so that's sort of where that sits. As
Yeah,
far as the marketing nation that's out there, I mean, I utilize some of those answers. Like if somebody's
yeah.
integrating with something and it's a very unique sort of like edge case, you can kind of get some information, which is helpful
Yeah.
as you go into other customer meetings. But there's nothing in particular aside from, is there any value add that I would bring to a user group where I'm really like, held accountable for in this instance?
Well, but that's wonderful because essentially at the end of the day, you're there. And that's something that I'm not thought about. So usually when we think of these kind of user groups, what you're thinking about is either your salespeople being there,
Hmm.
maybe your customer success, or maybe people from product management. But your role is rather unique because you, from what I'm hearing you say, is that you need to be there because it's just not for that customer, but it's all for other future customers who
Right.
are not in that group, that but who are going to use the functionalities and the benefits that they're looking for. You might have to translate that. And I think attending these, being part of it, is where you form the liaison between using the product experts language but bringing it from your knowledge as a solutions consultant from the customer's
Yeah.
perspective. And then what you learn from that user groups can then be translated into what you would do when you go out into the field after the meeting and everything else.
And that's one
Fascinating.
thing I always say too, is like my superpower. So when I graduated from CICS at Ball State and went into like the technology space,
Yeah,
right? I'm not a technologist by trade
yeah.
whatsoever. And CICS, gave me that. But I think my superpower is being able to understand all the technical stuff that I'm,
Mm,
never would have thought I could actually understand, and translating that to the business user's perspective, right? So if I'm in a meeting with a CMO, with C-level executives that really aren't interested in seeing the little nooks and crannies of a specific product set, they would rather understand the business value, and bringing those key, like hard hitting points is really, what I do. And so I think that especially is helpful at the big trade shows that we go to, right? Because they see the big keynote with the top messaging and really the value and what's coming and the exciting stuff. And then they come to, a lot of the solutions consultants at the booths to
yeah.
kind of drill into like, what's the look and feel of this? What does this really do? What's kind of under the hood in some of these instances? And so that's really where we kind of plug in, especially with new customers when we're like on the ground, whether it's in meetings with demos or, at these different events. I think it's a really cool time and space to connect with people.
Fantastic. Okay, now let's get into the fact when we do. So one of the things that always has fascinated me, and I come from old school sales. What is old school sales? Picking up the phone, use yellow pages, and call customers. And of course, the people who have been following some of the videos that we made have now understood that there is a world of inbound marketing. So how can I get customers into my websites, to my social media, to my blogs, or my YouTube channels, and everything else? And one of the things that they can get the leads, but where things start getting murky for a lot of organizations is how do I then follow up on those leads? How do I make sure that I put the right content initially? And then how do I translate that into marketing automation? So give us, given the fact that Marketo is the leader, or at least is seen as the leader in marketing automation. So can you give us a heads up about when I'm trying to generate inbound leads, what are some things I have to keep in mind? And
Mm-hmm.
then when I then start using marketing automation as a kind of another way, what are some things that tips and tricks that marketers would suggest?
Yeah. I mean, so the biggest thing, especially when you're using website, when you're using, social, whatever that is, and you're thinking about inbound lead generation, on the Marketo side of the house, we're focused on, B2B
Yeah,
specifically. So it's really looking at, we need to capture information utilizing a lead gen form
yeah,
on a landing page, right? So where somebody's giving us a name, first name, last name, and email address. If we get that email address, right, we're pretty golden. So that's what we're looking for. I will say with utilizing Marketo, what we do right when we implement is put a little piece of tracking code on the website. So we can start tracking behaviors of people that haven't converted to a known lead, right? So we've cookied them and we understand, hey, they've clicked on this page. Oh, they've hit our pricing page 10 times in the last week, right? They're interested, they're engaged. And once we do have that sort of form conversion in some way, whether it's, registering to attend a webinar, downloading a white paper, right? Or just interested, hey, give me a call. Once we get that person's information, we can tie all the behavior that we've already understood about them and make that customer profile a little bit more robust, right? So we understand some actions they've taken, which gives us context when we do pick up the phone on the sales side of the house. And we can kind of see what they've done, right? And what they're interested in, where they've spent most of their time. So as far as pulling in some of those leads, that's typically what we'll see, right? And then at that point, an SDR might get on the phone. And then once we've got that email address, we can begin marketing to them in really any way, right, that makes sense for your business. So whether it's, a lot of emails, you send them in sort of like a nurturing program and see, what they respond to from there. Or if it's, some people still run like direct mail or SMS or whatever. Like there are a lot of different channels, right, for us to go get in front of people, but that's really what we need to be able to do so.
Indeed. So when you talk about these forms, so one of the things that we always get is that when people come to a website, they know that these days they're conditioned to expect that if I want to get some information, I need to give some initial information. Now, any kind of tips that you would suggest to make sure that you don't lose the interest of the customer by asking for way too much information? So one of the things that we hear is ask for little pieces of information every time, but have good content so that the customers want to keep coming back. So what are the recommendations that you would suggest?
So within a lot of marketing automation platforms, obviously Marketo too, there's an ability to do progressive profiling. So we have an idea of, okay, we want all this information. That'd be perfect, right? But they're not going to give it to us all at once. So let's capture like the first name, last name, email, and maybe the company they work for. And then from there, as they come back, we can sort of maybe capture a little bit more. So, a lot of times I think it's incentivized. Like if it's aligned to something I'm interested in, I'm willing to give you my information, right? Or if it's a white paper or whatever, we want to grab that. And so I would say definitely progressive profiling, right? Not to just if I see 20 fields, I'm either going to give you a lot of fake information or I'm just not going to do it at all. That's really important and kind of key up front. And then two, I think, understanding what they've engaged with and having that sort of context that we can pull in to get, a better view of what they care about. That helps us in marketing and also where we meet them, right? Maybe it's a form on LinkedIn and it's sitting out there instead of on our site because they're way more active on LinkedIn, right? It's sort of understanding that. And that's really, what we're able to do with sort of capturing those different levels of engagement.
It's very interesting. So when you talk about this factors of where do those forms lie, right? Is that something that as a solution consultant, when you have to sell Marketo solutions to your customers, are those the kind of questions that you ask your customers saying, listen, where do your audience typically come and look for information about your products, your solutions? You see what I mean? Because you're going to have you might have an organization that has a traditional marketing department that does typical print, even in B2B, they could be doing print advertising and stuff like that. And they might have a very, very small division, one or two people responsible for social media. Because from my experience, in many B2B non-technology driven organizations, marketing is still seen as making brochures or creating websites and stuff like that.
Yeah, the maturity curve for them is in very initial stages. So in a previous life, when I was, a technical sales specialist at IBM, I was aligned to the industrial market. So all industrial accounts. And that's really where you saw, a lot of that more like immaturity in the model, which is fine, right? It's a good place to start. So it's interesting having a marketing conversation because I don't consider myself a marketer at all, right? I consider myself a solutions consultant, and I've kind of fallen into the marketing space in a very backwards way. But I do like the conversation, right? Because when I go to demo a product, I'm not necessarily saying, where your customer is most likely coming from. It's more of an identifying like what channels are you utilizing today? Which ones aren't you that you want to scale into? And let me show you, as we set up a campaign, what would it look like to push out a list to a partner to run the direct mail campaign side, right? Yes, we have an integration that's going to do that for you. And then show you, okay, how do I can build out an email content all day. How do I build out a push notification that we can run through our partner that handles the mobile side of the house? So sort of showing them kind of the nuts and bolts of how we help support and integrate, in a very seamless way with some of these third-party, systems that might handle some of these things, I would say is more of what I'm showing, but always trying to figure out, right, what's that use case that we really want for our customers, because what looks like a conversion and a success for one business can vary, right? I span all industries and all types of customers. And so it is really interesting to see where people are, where they want to go. A lot of people are starting to turn the corner into mobile, right? They do social, but maybe it's not as, specific to an audience they'd like to target, or they're trying some stuff out. So just sort of fine tuning and really getting the right tools and partners in place to really do that is kind of the conversation I have.
I love this. So what I find really fascinating, you hit the nail on the head when you said you're a solution consultant, but in my head, solution is getting or fulfilling a need that a customer has, right? And that need, especially in the marketing space, is going to depend upon the marketing maturity of the organization. So my whole point is, your job is so difficult because you could be talking to two different verticals. So you could have one call with a pharmaceutical company, following that up with a company in manufacturing, for example.
Yeah. I talk about truck parts often. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So you're talking about truck parts, right? So, but then what happens is you could be, if you think of truck parts, and then you have Volvo trucks on one hand, and then let's say, for example, you have Freightliner on the other hand. And so what happens suddenly is that Volvo trucks might have a much higher marketing maturity,
right,
rather than Freightliner, for example. Again, I'm not necessarily into trucks myself, so I'm just Volvo trucks. I know Freightliner. I think I've seen them on the streets.
right.
So that's what happened. So now my question is, to what extent, what do you look for to gauge the maturity of the marketing organization that you want to sell to?
Yeah. So it's interesting. There are a lot of factors that go into it. So if we come into a marketing organization that is not really utilizing marketing automation at all, right? Like maybe once a month they've somehow, like, I don't know, put together a list of people in whatever way, and they're just blasting out one email, right? And they're not really tracking anything but like how many people have opened it. That's not marketing automation, right? That's like a spray and pray approach. Like, hopefully this engages somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
But if we think about, having a continued conversation in a personalized manner where we're really marketing to, everything that we've gathered about this person, behavioral information that they're taking, right, that we've captured, also all that demographic information we have living in a database, then it's a bit more dynamic. So I really look at what tools are they using today? Where is their data sitting? Are they able to access it? Can you pull that in? And then what action are they taking from there, right?
Yeah.
What are you tracking? What's important? And then where do you want to go? So if I come in and somebody's utilizing like a MailChimp, for example, there's not really true marketing automation going on there. So I can sort of very early on see what do they have the capability to do?
Yeah.
Where do they want to go? And then we can partner with them to get them there, of course. And then, we get some interesting models too, especially in the industrial space, since we were speaking about that, like talking to, an auto company, right? They have their dealers that they market to, they have end customers they market to, they have a financial, whole host of people they market to. And then they've got, marketing that they have to support through the dealer to the end customer. So it's like a B to B to C model, and it can get super complex, and they might have all the tools, under the hood that available to them, but they might not really be utilizing that or offering up really a distributed marketing even model to their dealers. So it can get a little crazy, but I like it because I'm selling the same solution, but we're fitting it in different ways to a variety of different customers that, have varied level of experiences. And it's, every day for me is just a little bit different. It's sort of like same trailer, different park, but it can get it's just, yeah, it's very interesting to me. Every day is different.
All I want to say is welcome to the life of an academic.
Yeah.
Because in sometimes when you go in, we have one set we have an audience who's undergrads, then we have grad students, then we have executives. And essentially suddenly what we have is that it could be the same content, but how we bring it to them is going to be different depending upon the level of expertise that is sitting across the table from us. And again, that's pretty much one of the things that we have to do. Couple of questions on this, and then I want to talk a little bit more about sales and marketing enablement, and everything else. And the one question I want to talk is, when you talk about this maturity, to what extent do you actually know going in with the kind of questions that they ask you, whether this is going to be, again, I'm not saying, so that's pretty much where your expertise comes in, right? Because you are going to give them, I'm assuming that Adobe has a kind of a list of solutions that can be provided, going all the way from full integration to, completely working with the best possible solution that has 4 or 5 different components to it, and the customer gets the most out of it. Or you could say, you know what, as you said, you say crawl, walk, and run kind of model. So from the crawl space, then this is what I'm going to propose to you. So apart from the firmographics, to what extent do you start looking at, okay, do they have a marketing budget? Do they have a marketing department? So other things that you look for.
Yeah. So really that's on the account executive to sort of qualify.
Yeah.
What I find is, right, we get a good context of what they're using today, where they're sitting, if they're in contract with somebody else, when does that contract end? When would they want to go live? Where's the handoff, right? Some of those typical questions. What are they looking to do, of course? But it's super, and I smile because you hope that your account executive up to that point has really qualified it out, and generally they do a good job. But sometimes you get in a situation, and in my role, you just have to pivot. I mean, you could show up to an onsite and they're like, I guess so with the client before an onsite, we'll do an alignment call generally to say, here's what we heard, here's what we plan on showing. Is this in line with what you're looking for? But man, I've gotten in meetings before and you sit down and they change their mind, and you're just, you're the technical, you're the smart one in the room. That sounds awful to say, but truly, like, you're the one that's kind of on the hook to pivot and adjust and make it what they want to be. And I think one of the harder things to do, right, especially when you have such a powerful set of solutions that you can sell, that you can help them, like, we can help you do everything.
Yeah.
Right, outside of a marketing automation perspective, because we've got the rest of Adobe, because we have an ecosystem of so many partners out there to really fill a lot of gaps. That's why they're there. When we listen to people and understand where they're meeting them, where they're at right now, sometimes it's very challenging, because I think we just in general care so much and put the client first, that when they're asking for a bathroom remodel, right, we don't go in and sell them a whole new build of a home. So that sometimes is a little challenging, especially when we see so much opportunity out there. But it's really, hit what we need to, show them the art of the possible, right? That we're ready for it when they're ready for it, but really just show in a very crisp way that we have heard them and that we understand them, right? And wherever they sort of take us in whatever journey we're on in the meeting, right? We're ready to sort of assist them in that way. And there's always the opportunity for follow-on. Typically, if we need another round, a deeper look, maybe we need to bring in a solutions architect, which is somebody that knows way more technically than I do. But as we're looking at, pulling in all their data sources, there's so many siloed data sources out there that these companies have, like within departments and then at the enterprise level generally too. And so they talk about how does that all connect and make them feel really comfortable moving forward that they're going to be taken care of. So it can go a million ways. I mean,
now one of the things, indeed, I think for me, this is really, really interesting in the fact that, let's say, for example, you come across a very, very well-structured organization in terms of marketing. They know what it is. At least what I mean by know is that, yes, they may not be doing it now, but they kind of go along with you. They know that they're going through change. They need to work with you on this and everything else. And a lot of times what are your thoughts on this? So a lot of times the companies forget that the kind of content that I'm generating to get the hook into my customers, a lot of that content is not a one-off, right? Many companies just stop there. They forget that the same kind of cutting edge content can be given to my outside field sales reps.
Yep.
And they could take it out there so that there is a kind of we at least call it integrated marketing communication. That is, we want to make sure that the same message that is there on your website, on your social media, in different formats, of course, but the message is going to be consistent throughout. So to what extent do you actually see it happening that companies which have invested so much in using these kind of lead generation have carried on with the consistency in the message later on in the complete sales cycle with their customers?
Sure. Yeah. So kind of from where I sit, what I'll do ahead of a demo is like, I'll hit their website, see if I get retargeted on Facebook or LinkedIn. You know, I'll fill out a form. Maybe they realize I'm a salesperson and don't talk to me, right? But it is interesting because we kind of test that, or I'll sign up for newsletters and I'm like, 2 weeks later, still haven't gotten an email, you know, but we do see some marketing organizations that are very sophisticated that are looking to take it to the next level, right? Whether it's like pulling in some AI capabilities or some cool stuff that we're able to do. And, you know, I've been in meetings before where we realize like the way that they've shown up, the information they've have, what they've shared with us and kind of what their vision is, where they're looking to go. Like we tell them, you guys have it together. If you don't think so, you do, you know, based on everything we've seen. And, you know, I've been in a few instances where, you know, a fellow solutions consultant or somebody else is just like, we're incredibly impressed with how you're running this, because we don't always see that on a day-to-day basis, you know. And I think all of those different efforts out there, when you're able to close that feedback loop, right, of all those different touch points out there, and continue that conversation in a relevant manner, it's so impressive, because there's so much data that lives out there, you know, and it's one of those things where it is a challenge because, you know, there's so much going on out there. And if you're actually able to pull all that in and take action on it in the right moment, right, in context, that's why I have a job, you know. So it's super interesting. And I have seen some cases where it's just they're ahead of the game and they might not realize it. So we make sure they know that, you know.
And that's always nice as well, because you can also use that as a kind of learning from that to go inform other companies too, right? Because that's all. It's not always that it's Marketo, but sometimes it also helps you to create positive buzz for some of your customers and tell other customers what a great place, and that's value that you bring to your customers too. Now, you mentioned that some companies, and this is going to be my last question about this before we can see some of the cool things that you want to show us about for Marketo as well, is that of all the companies that you've talked to, how many of these companies have their act together? So you said there are some that are great. Give me a percentage wise. We are not dissing the companies. All I'm saying is that that's what I always say is all companies come in with the best intention of keeping their customers happy and be profitable themselves as well, right? But how many of them, in your opinion, percentage-wise? Your percentage. I'm not talking about what research has done, but from your day-to-day interactions.
I honestly, that's the hardest question I've been asked in a long time. And I've been asked some really technical questions in the last week. It's interesting to think about that, because I think there are certain things that people will do very well, and it's not always the same thing. And then, you know, there are a lot of common challenges across the board. I would say, you know, it might be generous, but maybe like 20% really have like, they're utilizing all their channels, right? They can access all their data, but man, the data piece is like, that's a challenge for so many places. Somebody comes in, implements something to like put a Band-Aid over a hole, you know, and then all of a sudden we're like, shoot, we want to unify all these things. So yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if that's accurate, but I have seen a few instances where it's like, wow, you know, this is really impressive. And, you know, the initiatives they have are just sort of, you know, at a different level than some of the day-to-day ones I'm speaking to. But I will say too, since I've come into, you know, Marketo just since January, I haven't worked on a lot of like large accounts and large integrated deals, you know, so I'm in sort of the smaller practice in general as I get started. So it's, you know, it's to be expected that a lot of those are more early on in some of their stages.
Fantastic. So, Katie, when we were talking earlier, you said you would be willing to show us some of the cool things that Marketo can do. Feel free to share your screen and then take us through some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. And it's perfect because you're talking to a dunce. So it's perfect. So essentially, it's almost look at it as educating me on this as well. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I I don't really know what I'm going to show, but we can walk through a couple things and see if that's helpful. But I'll start, I guess, with just a couple slides. So by the way, that's my LinkedIn information. If anybody wants to connect with me, happy to talk. Yeah, so Adobe acquired Marketo late in 2018, and then I came in after the acquisition, which was really exciting. Adobe in general offers, their whole experience cloud, right? So we're talking about marketing. They have a B2C marketing tool that's very impressive, right? Commerce, analytics, advertising, they have their whole creative suite. And then, they've brought in Marketo for the B2B side. So just a look here of kind of everything that sits. Marketo sits here. That's what we'll be focused on today. But again, just a ton that Adobe does. And I absolutely have loved working here. My GIF's not going to work. So we'll look at the Marketo engagement platform. So within Marketo, right, B2B marketing automation powerhouse, there are a lot of different apps, things that you can do. Account-based marketing, you can send out your emails, you can nurture some of those, people through a stream, push stuff out to social. You'll see a sales intel app on the slide, and that is also what I plan on showing today too. But a lot that lives in there, and then partners that fill gaps, if we don't have the ability to do so. To talk just quickly about Marketo, I think one of the most impressive probably customer use cases we have is Microsoft, right? So Marketo sits here in their stack. They utilize that for their marketing automation efforts, all of them, Microsoft enterprise-wide. And you see all the other partners and things that they have to fill out their ecosystem. I mean, it's crazy, right? A lot of different partners they use. But Marketo really sits at the core, right? We're pulling in all that data, taking action upon it for the likes of Microsoft. So I always like to show that. And then here I think is maybe important, especially for the CRM class specifically. Yeah. Here's the integration of Marketo and Salesforce. So what's happening is all of your leads and contacts that are sitting out in Salesforce that are being updated, right? Opportunities are updated. We're adding activities that's synced over into the Marketo database. Right? So it's stored there. So sales and marketing have clear line of sight into what lives in that system. Some of those fields go both ways. So if something is updated on the marketing side, right, we're tracking, clicks a link in an email, then they go fill out a form. We'll pass that back into Salesforce so our sellers understand what's going on. So it's a self-healing sync, right? In almost real time, that'll be updated. The opportunity, that is the one source of truth lives in the CRM, and that's going to be passed over to Marketo for our knowledge, but we don't want the marketing people messing with that. So we've just got that moving one way. We have integrations obviously with other CRMs, Microsoft Dynamics, that sort of thing, but our Salesforce integration is arguably the tightest one of all marketing automation platforms out there, which is why I show it. So we'll sort of move on from here. I know this is sort of rapid fire, but as you think about a typical marketing funnel, right? Yeah. This is how it generally goes. Like an anonymous person out on our site, clicking around, doing whatever they do, right? We convert them to known when they fill out a form, sort of as we discussed. They become engaged with our brand, right? We continue to market them. We've got salespeople maybe talking to them, and opportunities created, converted, won, deals closed, right? Like that's the perfect happy path, but that's not always what that looks like. It's not always a perfect flow. And so sometimes you've got somebody here that maybe doesn't have the budget, the need, the time to transact right now. We recycle them back through. Well, marketing can still continue that conversation with them. So that's sort of what we're looking at here is, it's success, but with detours. So, we might get to conversion, but it might take time. And along the way, we don't want to just drop them into black hole. We want to still be able to have a conversation with them. So just this type of model that I kind of start with, and we can zoom in from here. But as we think about, marketing in general within Marketo, let's see, I'll show here. So these are all of our different applications. We've got account-based marketing. We've got within the marketing activities, you're going to build out your email. You're going to segment out those lists. What I love about the campaigns that we have within Marketo is we have triggers, which are basically like active listening devices. We're waiting for something to happen. And as soon as that thing happens, we pull them into a list, right? So as soon as they click a link in the email, as soon as they fill out a form, as soon as an opportunity for them is created in Salesforce, we can set them off on this automated journey of content that's being pulled over. We can utilize lead scoring, right? So as they take a specific action or as they're that ideal person that we want to go market to, we can be calculating that score. And when it hits a certain threshold, we can pass it over to sales. So I'm not sure if you want to see anything on like the marketing activity side of the house, but I'm happy to show you what we have that lives within Salesforce that helps out the sellers. So
what we can actually do, yes. So essentially what we have in the interest of your time as well, you could choose what is the case. And if
Okay.
needed, we can come back and do another session at a later date where we can
I'm
talk,
happy.
because
I'm
this
happy
is
to do this as often as you like. This is fun for me.
it is absolutely indeed.
Your
So
questions don't stump me. So
yeah, this is great. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So here in Salesforce, right, this is typically what you'll see. All your leads are listed there. It looks like an Excel spreadsheet to me. If I were a seller and I logged in, I wouldn't know how to prioritize my day unless you sort of have that tribal knowledge of interacting with your accounts, right?
Yeah.
So there's a function within Marketo that is basically an iframe application.
Yeah.
This is called Marketo Sales Insight, and I'm okay showing this because I know there's a YouTube video out there already. But really what it's doing is it's rolling up those best bets. So as a seller logs in, their leads are prioritized for them. And they're prioritized for them by those stars and flames shown here. So the stars mean this is the ideal person and profile of somebody we want to go target from our business, right? So they have the right job title, right? They maybe own the budget, have budget, whatever it looks like. You build out that criteria of that persona, and the better fit, the more stars. The flames, right, it's a match. So the flames represent the engagement taken by the specific lead, right? Have they filled out the form? Have they attended a trade show, a webinar, whatever it is, right? More stars, more flames, good match, go talk to them essentially. What you see here on a lead feed is sort of like a live Twitter feed that's showing, hey, Glenn's been on all of these pages today. Let's pick up the phone right now in this moment because this isn't real time. And when we call him, we have a conversation that is in context of the actions he's taking out on our site, right? We have that intel to go talk to them. What I like about here, when you drill into a specific lead and you look at some of the detail that's going to be out there, what we have on the marketing side is the ability to track something we call interesting moments. So marketing can set up, okay, as soon as they hit a milestone of when they filled out a form, or say they've hit our pricing page 70 times in the last week, they're just begging to buy from us, right? So let's log an interesting moment and push that over to sales so they have clear line of sight into some of these things that are happening.
Got it.
We can see that score that marketing's tracking as they go along. This one's my favorite part though. So we can see the email that our sellers have sent out, but also that have been sent out by the marketing side of the house. So we're finally getting, for our sellers to know where's marketing supported us, right? So we can see the little Marketo logo here. That's what's been sent out by them. We can see how these people, this lead has opened, have they clicked them, right?
Yeah.
And then this part too, which I love this part about this tool, right? All of our sellers at Marketo utilize this. You can add them right into a Marketo campaign. So say I get off the phone from somebody and they're like, listen, contract for our tool isn't up until September. We might not really be looking to roll something out until January. I can add them into a nurture program.
Got it. Yeah.
So it's all branded. And then also too, you can send a marketing templatized email right from within the platform. So if we want to, I think there's an Outlook plugin and a Gmail plugin too. But if we don't want our salespeople going rogue, right, and just kind of giving out whatever content they want, you can pull in this branded content from marketing. This one's not the most beautiful template, but right, if we want the social buttons and all that stuff for that consistency and that messaging, as we spoke about before, arming your sales team with this is really key. And you can send that out, and this will be tracked in Marketo too, right? So we have that full paper trail of, what they've been sent, what they've engaged with. It gives your sellers really good looking stuff to send out. And you can kind of lock down that content too. You can give them the ability to personalize it, but that just looks very uniform and very professional coming from, especially, a professional business. But having your sellers be able to do this is so key. So
indeed, the flames part is something that I've seen in the past in my previous life, where again, this was 3-4 years ago, when again, we, in terms of teaching, we were just getting to hear about marketing automation and Marketo and stuff like that. So again, I'm talking not about the business, I'm talking about as an academic, but then when we're teaching executives and then suddenly they come up to you and say, hey, listen, this is a push that's come to us. And there are 3 flames, which means that this is a hot flame. It's better for you to call them now. And then later on, once we start digging deep, I love your stars and your flames, because the kind of the stars are your demographic, which says, okay, who is this person and that kind of stuff. That's your kind of lead qualification based on sales kind of qualification, but based on their activities that they've engaged with you. So the idea being that I'm assuming that a 3-star and a 3 flame would mean that call them now.
Yeah.
And you see what I mean? And then of course, so my question is on the right hand side here, I see things like the same person's name coming up 3 times. So why is that the case? Does it mean that they've done 3 things? You see what I mean?
Yeah, so this is that live lead feed. So Omer here that's clicked on these pages 3 times, he's out there doing that right now.
Right now, got it. So that's right. So that's what they're doing, right? So it's real time. It's being done as well. And I know that at one point in time, does this also take into account? Let's say, for example, if Omer has visited your website and is saying something positive about you on their LinkedIn, on their Twitter, kind of social listening. Does
So
Marketo does yeah?
for social listening specifically, I think we would utilize a partner like Sprinkler, I want to say, but you can, pull that data into the database and store that from a partner like that. So, if we want a field out there that says, positive, yes, no, whatever it is, you can have those custom objects. Either if you have custom objects in Salesforce, you can push those into Marketo. We can handle that. Some marketing automation platforms cannot. But if you have anything special like that you'd like to track and then take action upon when that occurs, that's where some of those partner integrations would come into play.
Very interesting. But then that would then be the responsibility of the customer's organization to say what they want to work with. Or if they tell, hey, listen, Marketo, we do not know what to do. Because I can imagine that would be even more powerful, right? So for example, I have the 3 stars, which means I'm the right kind of customer to be talking to.
Sure.
Being engaged, but I do not know my engagement, was it positive or negative? You see what I mean? I could visit your website 3 times to say, is it really this price they're talking about?
Yeah.
I may be visiting the page, not from the viewpoint of I want to buy from them, but saying, are they kidding me? You know what I mean? But then if you also have that, what are they thinking? And if you can have that part, that lends itself even more. That is a valence or the positivity or the negativity of their thoughts.
Right.
I can easily imagine that from the customer's perspective, your customer's perspective, that will make it all the more powerful, saying, if they're saying positive things, they're visiting your website enough, and they have the right profile, call them now. On the other hand, with the right kind of message. But if they're saying something negative, it's a chance for you to go to an email campaign to try and gauge what their thoughts are. And that for me will probably be the next step in terms of understanding and how would you pull social listening and all that kind of stuff into this and add to what you already have.
Yeah. Any of those data sources that are really important for businesses to understand and pull in, right? We can handle. And so, that really gives a full, clear picture, right? Because that you could miss, like,
Indeed.
you could just think that they're really loving whatever, but maybe they're like clicking on something and not really getting there. And so that's where even like web analytics, could be very helpful as far as sort of like replaying sessions of what did somebody experience. That absolutely is a fair use case.
I think this is so I have one last question before I think we can wrap it up for now, and then maybe depending upon what our audience is, we can come back again and I can ask you more questions. But one of the things which I wanted to ask you is the following. So you have these 3 stars here, right? The 3 stars out here and everything else. To what extent is that something that is dynamic in the fact that, is it something that the salespeople will also have to fill it out? Salespeople, SDRs will have to do it, or is it automatically done based on the forms that your people have to fill out?
So I think as far as the criteria, right, you would want to sit with the sales team, with the marketing team, identify who's my ideal profile, and then you would set up those parameters of what that looks like, right? So if it's a certain field in the database, if it's a certain like score threshold, whatever that is, you would identify the criteria of that list, and that's what would live here. My assumption is that you could change that if, that were to change, like the ideal customer profile. But as I understand it, you would build that out, on the business side, and it's going to be rolling up, based on those and where they fit within the criteria. That's how those stars would be identified.
And I can easily see why companies sometimes struggle with sales and marketing alignment, because as you said, those stars have to be decided based on sales and marketing sitting together.
Yeah.
And when that does not,
that doesn't always happen. And
exactly.
That was such a big learning point for me. We also have another tool that really helps you set up like sales playbooks almost. So taking that tribal knowledge that's like written, on a whiteboard of the ideal flow for getting in touch with somebody, and really like digitizing that so that if a new SDR comes on board, right, they have a best practice playbook, right? So it's turning in, a college recruit into like Tom Brady in the first week, because you have okay, at this point, send it this email. At this point, reach out on LinkedIn, and like, this is when you call them. Here's what's worked best from in the past in our business. And we have a tool that like sets up that campaign and what that should look like for you, instead of determining your own style or just cold calling somebody nonstop, right? You've got that sort of laid out, and that absolutely requires sales and marketing to have that alignment and that air cover from the marketing side. So,
and at what point do you take those 3 stars that you have here and take enough of those 3 stars and then put them into a separate kind of segment, for lack of a better word, and look at it from the viewpoint of account-based marketing and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we do have an account-based marketing module. And let me see if I think I might have it pulled up. Oh, it's still loading over here. I timed out. Yeah, so as far as account-based marketing goes, let's see. You kind of import your specific account list.
Indeed. And that's what indeed.
Doesn't really have any data here, sorry. But yeah, you would have that account.
Yeah, got it.
Have an understanding of what leads live within that parent account. And then one thing I think that we do is cool too. I'm sure other places do it, but we do reverse IP lookup. So we have potential people that we're tracking too, that we think, sit in the specific company, and until they convert, we can kind of like put them down a specific funnel. But you can grab, that ideal customer profile and kind of prioritize the people within the account as well. So yeah, sorry, I don't have any fun data.
No, but again, as I said, this is something where we just going. For me, that's what I would use as well. I would take a look at all of those 3-star accounts.
Yeah.
And say that at the end of the day, it's all the right kind of people that we need to nurture. And of course, or we could say, okay, those 3 stars with the 3 flames, or let's say, for example, a good combination of 3 stars and 2 flames, anything there needs to go into the account-based marketing so that we can nurture them even better.
Right. Absolutely.
That's pretty much what I would imagine, that if you want to take it from there, because that's, in my opinion, is where this could be something like, for lack of a better word, in a B2B context, like mass marketing kind of stuff. Whereas you can then take a portion of these of very select accounts and then start taking it, and then even start rethinking your marketing plus your sales playbook for them in terms of how you want to interact with them, because you might want to spend more resources with those accounts, because you have a chance of maybe getting a big deal. So it could be like 50 licenses, 100 licenses kind of stuff, which could be pretty big in a marketing context.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly. And one thing too about the ABM module is we do have the ability to run some machine learning algorithms to surface, what accounts are likely to churn, right?
Yeah.
We don't really want to target them. What's the top accounts that we want to go after? So it's interesting, some of that stuff that's underlying there to really sort of help with that effort. It's like, it's that marketing, person with the tribal knowledge with, these stars and the flames, but also adding in, the machine learning, the AI capability to sort of like look for some of those things that are really beneficial to say, as you prioritize, let's add in some of the machine aspect here to really help that out. So yeah, it's interesting. Sure.
Absolutely. Katie, thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure that the viewers are going to really enjoy this conversation. And personally, for me, it was very interesting to understand the solution consultant from the viewpoint of, for me, the eye-opening thing was, again, I'd never considered a solution consultant go hand in hand with customer success, because most companies, the customer success concept is still relatively new, which is taken off after the SaaS business models have come up. But I'd never considered how closely they might need to work with you, because if part of it is educating the customers and stuff like that, they have to know whom to contact or with whom to work with, educating the customers, and who better to ask than you guys. And I also think it's very fascinating from the viewpoint of how you would be the creative source for a lot of innovation and ideas, bringing it from the market back to your product teams. And it's a two-way street, because you're out there talking to customers and you're going to go back and say, wait a minute, I found this was something unique. That is something that we think we might need to look at. And just by asking those questions, you're probably triggering ideas in the head of your product marketeers, rather than just them sitting in cubicles or in rooms and then doing a lot of things, putting themselves in the shoes of the customer. And it's putting yourself in the shoes of the customer is still not exactly in the shoes of your customer. So that is pretty much where this solution consultant would come in as well.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the roles where, like I said, every day is a little bit different. Every customer has, to an extent, pretty much the same challenges to a degree, but unique, to their businesses. And yeah, it's definitely keeps you on your toes. And I'm always learning, which is great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Katie. Thank you so much for your time.
You are welcome. I'm glad we could do this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks. Again, everyone, that comes to the conclusion of this edition. I'll make sure that I will have the details, contact details of the LinkedIn profile of Katie, so that in case you want to connect with Katie, you're going to have that as well. Thank you once again.